The scout ship moved through the dark space without making any sound. It was a small vessel, painted black and covered with special metal plates that stopped any signals from escaping. Inside, Commander Vexral sat in his chair and watched the screens in front of him with his 4 yellow eyes. Vexral was a Kethrani, a species that had conquered many worlds across the galaxy. His body was tall and thin, covered with hard brown scales. His head was shaped like a triangle, and his mouth was full of small, sharp teeth. 2 long arms ended in hands with 6 fingers each. He had been a war scout for 40 years, and he had never failed a mission. His job was simple. Go to a new star system. Watch the species that lived there. Count their ships. Study their weapons. Report back to the fleet. Then the invasion would begin. Today, he was watching the humans. The humans lived on a small blue planet called Earth, the 3rd world from a yellow star they called the Sun. They had only been traveling through space for about 30 years. They had built some colonies on nearby planets and moons. They were young. They were weak. They would be easy to conquer. Vexral pressed a button, and the screen showed him a closer view of the human patrol ships near their Mars colony. He counted 12 vessels. They were small frigates, each one about 200 meters long. Their weapons were basic plasma cannons, the kind that the Kethrani had stopped using 100 years ago because they were too weak. His mandibles clicked together. This was almost too easy. Record observation number 47, he said to his ship's computer. Human military presence in the Sol system remains minimal. I have now observed their patrol routes for 3 standard weeks. They have 12 combat vessels defending their inner colonies. No capital ships detected. No advanced weapons detected. Their defense stations around Earth are old designs with limited firepower. He paused and looked at the blue planet in the distance. It was beautiful, he had to admit. Blue oceans, white clouds, green and brown land. The Kethrani High Council would be pleased to add it to their territory. My recommendation, he continued, is immediate invasion. The humans do not have the military power to resist a Dominion battle group. A fleet of 100 ships would be more than enough, but Fleet Commander Zorvith has 300 ships waiting at the staging area. This will be a quick victory. He ended the recording and prepared to send it through a quantum burst to the waiting fleet. The message would travel faster than light, reaching Zorvith in just a few minutes, even though he was many light years away. Vexral felt proud. Another successful mission. Another species about to fall under Kethrani rule. The humans would learn to serve their new masters. Just like 47 other species before them. He pressed the transmit button. What Vexral did not know was that he had been watched from the moment he entered the Sol system, deep inside the asteroid belt, hidden within a hollowed-out rock called Station Omega. Admiral Kevin Price sat in a dark room full of screens and computers. He was a man of 55 years, with gray hair cut short and a face that had seen many battles. His uniform was simple and black, with no decorations except for the small eagle symbol on his collar that showed his rank. The alien ship just sent another message, said Captain Laura Bennett, who sat at the console next to him. She was younger than Price, maybe 40, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. Our people decoded it in real time. He is recommending invasion. He thinks we only have 12 ships. Price nodded slowly. His face showed no emotion, but inside he felt a cold satisfaction. The plan was working. That is exactly what we wanted him to think, Price said quietly. Captain Bennett looked at her admiral. She had worked with him for 10 years, but she still found it hard to believe what they had built together. How long do we wait? Until they come to us. Let them bring their fleet. Let them think they are attacking a helpless world. And then we show them the truth. The truth was something that no alien species had ever discovered. For 15 years since humanity first detected signals from other civilizations in the galaxy, the governments of Earth had worked together on a secret project. They called it Project Shadow. The public knew about the 12 patrol frigates. They knew about the small defense stations. They believed that Earth's military was young and weak, still learning how to fight in space. The news reports said so. The politicians said so. Everyone believed it. But the real fleet was hidden. Inside asteroids like Station Omega, humanity had built shipyards that worked day and night. On the dark side of the moon, factories produced weapons that no one outside the project knew existed. Beneath the ice of Europa, training facilities prepared thousands of soldiers and pilots for a war that everyone knew was coming. Admiral Price stood up and walked to the main screen. It showed a map of the solar system with hundreds of small dots scattered throughout the asteroid belt and beyond. 412 capital ships, he said softly. 2,000 fighter craft. Weapons that can destroy matter at the atomic level. And they think we have 12 frigates. Captain Bennett joined him at the screen. When they come, they will get the surprise of their lives. Price turned to look at her. His eyes were hard. We've been preparing for this moment since I was a young captain. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Laura. Species that look weak get conquered. Species that look strong get attacked before they can become a threat. So we chose a third option. Look weak, Bennett said, until it is too late for them to run. Exactly. Across the room, a young officer named Lieutenant Chris Palmer raised his hand. He was new to Station Omega, only recently promoted to the command center. Sir, how do we know they will attack? Maybe they will try to make peace first. Price walked over to the young man. He understood the hope in his voice. Once, Price had felt the same hope. But years of intercepting alien communications had taught him the truth. We have listened to their messages for 15 years, Price said. The Kethrani do not make peace. They conquer. They enslave. They take what they want. Every species they have met, they have destroyed or subjugated. He put a hand on Palmer's shoulder. I wish we lived in a galaxy where talking could solve problems. But we do not. So we prepared for war while pretending we could not fight one. Palmer nodded slowly. I understand, sir. Good. Because when they come, we will need every person here to do their job perfectly. One mistake could cost us everything. Price returned to his chair and sat down heavily. The waiting was always the hardest part. He knew the Kethrani fleet would come. He knew they would expect an easy victory. He knew what he had to do when they arrived, but knowing did not make it easier down in the cold darkness of space. Vexrol's scout ship continued its silent watch, completely unaware that every move it made was being tracked. The alien commander believed he was the hunter, studying his prey before the kill. He did not understand that the prey was watching him too. And the prey had claws he could not imagine. The trap was set. Now humanity just had to wait for the enemy to walk into it. Fleet Commander Zorvith stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and read the scout report for the third time. His eyes moved across the words slowly, and his mouth curved into something that looked like a smile. 12 ships. The humans had only 12 ships. ZO, or single quotes VETH, was old for a Kethrani, nearly 200 years of age. His scales had turned from brown to gray, and his movements were slower than they used to be. But his mind was still sharp, and his hunger for conquest had not faded with time. He had led the Dominion fleet for 60 years and had never lost a battle. Prepare the fleet for jump, he ordered. His voice was deep and rough, like stones grinding together. We leave for the Sol system in 1 standard hour. Around him, officers rushed to obey. The bridge of the Eternal Dominion was a massive room, curved like the inside of an egg, with screens covering every wall. 300 crew members worked at stations that controlled weapons, shields, engines, and communications. The ship itself was 2 kilometers long, shaped like a sword, painted in the red and gold colors of the Kethrani Dominion. Sub-Commander Rethka approached, his leader with a datapad in his hands. He was younger than Zorvith by 100 years, eager and ambitious. "Fleet Commander, I have a question." Zorvith looked at him with cold eyes. "Speak." "The scout report says the humans have been traveling through space for 30 years. That is a short time, but they have spread to several planets and moons in their system." Rethka paused, choosing his words carefully. "Is it possible they have hidden some of their military strength? Perhaps they have more ships that Vexral did not see." For a moment, Zorvith said nothing. Then he made a sound that was the Kethrani version of laughter. "You are young, Rethka. You have not conquered as many worlds as I have. Let me teach you something." He gestured to a screen that showed images of the human ships. "Look at their vessels. Basic designs. Weak weapons. Slow engines. These are the ships of a species that has just learned to walk among the stars. They do not have the knowledge to build better." Rethka nodded, but did not look convinced. "But what if—" "Enough." Zorvith cut him off with a wave of his hand. "We have 300 warships. Even if the humans had 100 vessels hidden somewhere, we would still crush them easily. Our shields can stop their weapons. Our cannons can tear through their hulls. This is not a battle. It is a harvest." Rethka bowed his head and stepped back. He knew better than to argue with the fleet commander. Far across the galaxy, aboard Station Omega, Admiral Price received the news he had been waiting for. "They are coming," said Lieutenant Palmer, looking up from his communication console. "We intercepted a fleet-wide message from the Kethrani. 300 ships will enter our system in approximately 6 hours." The command center became very quiet. Everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the Admiral. This was the moment they had trained for. This was the moment that would decide the future of humanity. Price stood up slowly. He looked around the room at the men and women who had dedicated their lives to this secret mission. They were soldiers, scientists, and engineers. They had worked in the shadows for years, building the hidden fleet, preparing for a war that most of humanity did not even know was coming. "Send a signal," Price said calmly. "Wake up the fleet." Captain Bennett pressed a series of buttons on her console. A coded message went out across the solar system, traveling at the speed of light to dozens of hidden locations. Inside asteroids throughout the belt, alarms began to sound. Crews who had been sleeping in their bunks jumped out of bed and ran to their stations. Engines that had been cold for months started to warm up. Weapons that had never been fired in combat received their final checks. On the dark side of the moon, Commander Daniel Wright rushed to the bridge of his ship, the USS Liberty. He was a tall man with dark skin and steady hands, a pilot who had spent 20 years preparing for this day. His ship was a battle cruiser, 500 meters long, armed with weapons that could tear through any known armor. "All hands to battle stations," he announced over the ship's speakers. "This is not a drill. The enemy is coming." Around him, his crew moved with speed and purpose. They had practiced this moment 1,000 times in simulations. Now it was real. At the Mars shipyards, buried deep beneath the planet's south pole, Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan supervised the launch of the fighter squadrons. She was a small woman with red hair and a quick mind, an engineer who had helped design many of the secret weapons that would soon be used in battle. 2,000 fighters ready for launch, she reported to Admiral Price through a secure channel. "The graviton cannons are fully charged on all capital ships. We are ready." Price acknowledged her report and turned to Captain Bennett. "What is the status of the decoy fleet?" Bennett checked her screen. "The 12 patrol frigates are in position near Earth. They will make a show of trying to defend the planet when the Kethrani arrive. Just enough resistance to be believable. Then they will retreat." Good. The aliens must believe they are winning until it is too late. The plan was simple but dangerous. When the Kethrani fleet arrived, they would see exactly what they expected to see: a weak human military running away in fear. The patrol frigates would fire a few shots, pretend to be damaged, and flee toward the inner planets. The defense stations around Earth would put up a brief fight before going silent. And while the aliens celebrated their easy victory, the real fleet would emerge from hiding in his small scout ship. Vexro watched the preparations with growing excitement. He had moved to a position near the edge of the system where he could observe the coming battle without being in danger. His job was done. Now he would watch the harvest begin. He opened a channel to the Eternal Dominion. "Fleet Commander, I am in position to observe the attack. The human ships are still on their normal patrol routes. They do not know you are coming." Zorvith's voice came back, full of confidence. "Excellent work, Vexral. You will be rewarded when this is over. Watch and record everything. The High Council will want to see how easily these humans fall." Vexral settled back in his chair with a feeling of satisfaction. This would be a quick battle. The humans would probably surrender after the first few shots. They were young and afraid, not like the hardened warriors of the Dominion. He had no idea how wrong he was. Aboard Station Omega, Admiral Price watched the countdown on his screen. 5 hours until the enemy arrived. 5 hours until the most important battle in human history. He thought about his family back on Earth, his wife, who believed he worked for a simple defense department, his 2 children, who did not know their father commanded a secret fleet. He had lied to them for 15 years to keep them safe. To keep everyone safe. If this battle failed, they would all die. The Kethrani did not take prisoners. They would strip Earth of its resources and kill or enslave every human being. That was what they had done to 47 other species. That was what they planned to do here. But if the battle succeeded, everything would change. The galaxy would learn that humanity was not weak. They would learn that Earth was not a world to be conquered. Price closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. Then he opened them and spoke to his crew. "In 5 hours, the enemy will arrive expecting an easy victory. They have studied us. They think they know our strength. They believe we are helpless." He paused and looked around the room. "They are wrong. Today we show them what humanity can really do. Today we fight for our future." A cheer went up from the command center. Officers clapped and shouted. For years they had worked in secret, never able to tell anyone what they were doing. Now the moment had finally come. Captain Bennett stepped close to the Admiral. "Do you think we can win?" Price looked at her with steady eyes. "We have to win. There is no other option." The waiting began. The sky above Earth split open with a flash of blue light. 300 Kethrani warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. They came in a sphere shape, with the massive Eternal Dominion at the center and smaller destroyers and cruisers spread out around it. Their weapons were already glowing with power. Their shields were already raised. On the bridge of his flagship, Fleet Commander Zorvith watched the blue planet grow larger on his screen. It was even more beautiful up close. Blue oceans that covered most of the surface. White clouds that swirled in patterns. Green forests and brown mountains visible on the land. Soon, it would all belong to the Dominion. "Report," he ordered. His tactical officer studied the sensors. "I detect 12 human combat vessels near the planet Mars, 6 defense stations in orbit around Earth. No other military targets visible." Zorvith made a satisfied sound. Just as Vexral reported. "Begin the attack. Send the first wave of fighters toward their defense stations." 2,000 Kethrani fighters launched from the larger ships. They were small and fast, shaped like triangles with sharp edges. Each one carried enough weapons to destroy a human frigate. They moved toward Earth in a swarm that blocked out the stars. On the USS Courage, one of the 12 patrol frigates, Captain Mark Santos watched the enemy approach with cold fear in his stomach. He was 35 years old, born on Earth, trained in the public navy. Until 1 week ago, he had believed his ship was part of humanity's main defense force. Then Admiral Price had told him the truth. "Remember your orders," Santos said to his crew. "We fight just enough to be believable. We take some damage. Then we run." His weapons officer, a young woman named Lisa Park, looked at him with worried eyes. "Sir, what if they destroy us before we can escape?" Santos gave her a grim smile. "Then we die as heroes. But I plan to survive this. Trust the Admiral's plan." The Kethrani fighters came closer. Santos raised his hand. "All weapons fire!" The Courage and the other 11 frigates opened up with their plasma cannons. Bright blue bolts of energy shot across space and struck the incoming swarm. A few enemy fighters exploded. A few more spun out of control, but there were too many. For every fighter that died, 10 more kept coming. On the Eternal Dominion, Zorvith watched the battle with amusement. Is this the best they can do? Their weapons are like toys. The Kethrani fighters reached the human frigates and began their attack. Green laser beams cut through space, hitting shields and hulls. The Courage shook as it took several hits. Warning lights flashed on every console. "Damage to forward hull," shouted the damage control officer. "Shields at 40%. Santos gripped his chair. The enemy weapons were even stronger than he had expected. "All ships, begin retreat. Fall back toward the inner planets." The 12 frigates turned and ran. They moved as fast as their engines could push them, leaving trails of smoke from damaged sections. Behind them, the Kethrani fighters followed, firing again and again. From his scout ship, Vexral recorded everything with growing pleasure. "The humans are running," he transmitted to the fleet. "Their resistance lasted less than 5 minutes. They are weak, just as I predicted." Zorvith received the message with satisfaction. "Continue the attack. Destroy their orbital stations. Prepare landing forces for the planet's surface." The Kethrani fleet moved toward Earth like a dark cloud. The defense stations fired their old weapons, but the shots bounced off the alien shields without causing any damage. One by one, the stations went silent as enemy fire tore them apart. In the command center of Station Omega, hidden deep in the asteroid belt, Admiral Price watched the destruction with a steady face. Inside, his heart was racing. Good men and women were dying on those stations. The crews had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not survive. They were buying time for the real fleet to get into position. "Status report," Price said quietly. Captain Bennett checked her screens. "All hidden fleet units are moving to their attack positions. Commander Wright reports the Liberty is ready. Lieutenant Commander Sullivan has the fighter squadron standing by. The graviton cannons are charged and waiting. And the jump interdiction field? Ready to activate on your command. Once we turn it on, nothing will be able to escape the system." Price nodded. The interdiction field was one of humanity's secret weapons. It created a bubble around the solar system that blocked hyperspace travel. The Kethrani would not be able to run when they realized what was happening. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Zorvith felt the thrill of victory. The human orbital stations were destroyed. The patrol frigates had fled in terror. Earth lay before him, defenseless and waiting. "Send a message to the planet's surface," he commanded. "Tell them to surrender immediately. If they refuse, we will begin destroying their cities from orbit." His communications officer prepared the transmission. But before he could send it, something strange appeared on the sensor screens. "Fleet Commander," the tactical officer said slowly. I am detecting unusual readings from the asteroid belt. Zorvith turned to look. What kind of readings? I am not certain. There appear to be power signatures. Many of them. Coming from inside the asteroids. Before Zorvith could respond, the asteroids began to open. Huge doors, hidden for years behind carefully placed rock and metal, slid apart across the belt. From inside them, ships emerged. Human ships, but not the weak frigates they had seen before. These were massive warships, 500 meters long, bristling with weapons that glowed with strange energy. One ship became 10. 10 became 50. 50 became 100. They kept coming. Impossible, Zorvith whispered, his confidence cracking for the first time. Admiral Price's voice came over every frequency in the system. Fleet Commander Zorvith. This is Admiral Kevin Price of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered our system with hostile intent. You expected to find a weak species with no real military. You were wrong. On the screen before him, Zorvith watched in horror as more than 400 human capital ships spread out across his field of vision. Behind them, 2,000 fighters launched and formed into attack wings. We've been watching you since you first sent your scout, Price continued. We decoded every message you sent. We know everything about your fleet. And now you will learn something about us. The hidden fleet surrounded the Kethrani in every direction. There was nowhere to run. We are humanity, Price said, and we do not surrender. The human ships opened fire. Beams of strange white energy shot across space, unlike any weapon Zorvith had ever seen. They struck the outer ring of Kethrani destroyers, and something terrible happened. The ships did not explode. They did not break apart. They simply dissolved. Metal, crew, weapons. Everything came apart at the atomic level and scattered into dust. 3 ships in 3 seconds. Gone. What are those weapons? Rethka screamed, his voice filled with terror. Zorvith could not answer. He could only watch as more beams struck more ships, each one removing a vessel from existence like it had never been there at all. From his scout ship at the edge of the system, Vexrel stared at his screens with his 4 eyes wide open. His mandibles hung loose in shock. This was not possible. This could not be happening. He had studied the humans for weeks. He had counted their ships. He had analyzed their weapons. They were supposed to be weak. Where had this fleet come from? Where had these terrible weapons come from? And then a worse thought hit him. If the humans had been hiding this much power, what else might they be hiding? On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, alarms screamed from every station. In the first minute of battle, the Kethrani had lost 20 ships. Their mighty fleet was suddenly not so mighty anymore. Zorvith finally found his voice. All ships, full attack. Target their command vessels. We can still win this. But even as he gave the order, he did not believe his own words. For the first time in 60 years of conquest, Fleet Commander Zorvith felt something he had never felt before: fear. Captain Larva Bennett commanded the USS Defiance from the center of the human attack formation. Her ship was one of the newest in the fleet, built in secret beneath the ice of Europa, and launched just 6 months ago. It carried 8 graviton cannons and enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Target the enemy cruisers on the left side, she ordered, her voice calm and steady, even as battle raged around her. Fire at will. The Defiance shook slightly as its cannons discharged. White beams of graviton energy crossed the darkness of space and struck 2 Kethrani cruisers. Both ships dissolved in seconds, their atoms spreading out like sand in the wind. Bennett did not celebrate. There was no time. More enemies were moving toward her position. Incoming fire from the right. Her tactical officer shouted. Green laser beams from a Kethrani destroyer hit the Defiance's shields. The ship shook harder this time, but the shields held firm. "Return fire," Bennett said. "Show them what we can do." On the other side of the battlefield, Commander Daniel Wright led the 1st Strike Division in a sweeping attack on the enemy flanks. His ship, the Liberty, moved through space like a dancer, dodging enemy fire while delivering death with every shot. "Stay in formation," he called to his squadron. "Don't let them separate us." The human ships moved together like a single creature with many parts. They had trained for this for years, practicing in hidden simulation chambers, learning to fight as one unit. Now that training was paying off, a group of Kethrani fighters tried to break through the formation. Human fighters from Lieutenant Commander Sullivan's squadrons intercepted them. Smaller graviton weapons tore through the enemy craft, leaving trails of dust where ships had been moments before. In his command center, Admiral Price watched the battle unfold on dozens of screens. Every ship was represented by a small dot, blue for human, red for Kethrani. At the start of the battle, there had been many more red dots than blue. Now the numbers were becoming more equal. "Status report," he demanded. "We have destroyed 94 enemy ships," a young officer reported. "We have lost 0. Their weapons cannot penetrate our shields. 0 losses." Price allowed himself a small moment of satisfaction. The new shield technology, developed in secret laboratories beneath the Sahara Desert, was working perfectly. It bent space around each ship, causing enemy weapons to curve away before they could hit. But the battle was not over yet. On the Eternal Dominion, Fleet Commander Zorvith screamed orders to his remaining ships. "Concentrate fire on their largest vessels. All ships focus on one target at a time." 200 Kethrani ships turned their weapons on a single human cruiser, the USS Victory. Hundreds of green beams struck its shields all at once, pouring more energy into the attack than any species had ever survived. Price watched the Victory shield readings on his screen. They dropped quickly. 80%, 60%, 40%. "Victory, pull back," he ordered. "Get behind the Liberty's formation." Captain Ryan Cole of the Victory acknowledged and began to retreat. But before he could escape, the shields failed. Green beams struck the hull, tearing through metal and equipment. "We have a breach on Deck 7. Cole shouted over the communication channel. "Fire in the engine room. We are losing power. Get your crew to the escape pods," Price ordered. "Abandon ship, if necessary." "No, sir." Cole's voice was firm. "We can still fight. Just give us a moment." The Victory's remaining weapons fired, destroying 3 enemy fighters that were moving in for the kill. Then Commander Wright's squadron arrived, placing their ships between the damaged cruiser and the enemy. "We have you covered, Victory," Wright called out. "Get to a safe distance and make repairs." The Victory limped away, trailing smoke and debris. But it was still alive. And its crew kept fighting, even as damage control teams rushed to seal the holes in the hull. Zo, our single quotes VETH, watched the human ship escape and felt a new emotion mixing with his fear. Respect. These humans did not run when they were hurt. They did not surrender when things became difficult. They fought on. "What kind of species is this?" he muttered to himself. Sub-Commander Rethka appeared at his side, his scales pale with shock. "Fleet Commander, we have lost over 100 ships. The humans have lost only 1, and that ship is still fighting. We cannot win this battle." Zorvith turned on him with fury in his eyes. "The Kethrani do not retreat. We do not accept defeat. Send in the reserve squadron." "There is no reserve squadron," Rethka said quietly. "They were all destroyed in the first wave." The words hit Zorvith like a physical blow. No reserves. Over 100 ships gone. And the humans were still coming. their strange white weapons destroying everything they touched. He looked at the tactical display and saw the terrible truth. His remaining ships were surrounded. The humans had spread out during the battle, forming a sphere around the Kethrani fleet. There was no escape route. "Try to jump to hyperspace," he ordered desperately. "Get us out of here." His navigation officer worked frantically at his console. Then he looked up with fear on his face. "I cannot lock on to hyperspace coordinates. Something is blocking our jump drives." "What?" "That is impossible." "It is true, Fleet Commander. Some kind of field is preventing any ship from entering hyperspace. We are trapped in this system." Zorvith felt his world falling apart around him. The humans had thought of everything. They had hidden their fleet. They had developed weapons that could destroy any ship with a single hit. And now they had trapped his fleet so it could not escape. This was not a battle. This was an execution. From her position on the Defiance, Captain Bennett saw the enemy fleet trying to break through the human line. She understood what was happening. The Kethrani had finally realized they were losing. Now they were desperate. "Don't let any of them through," she ordered. "If they escape, they will bring more ships." The human fleet tightened its grip. Every time a Kethrani ship tried to run, it was cut off by human vessels. Every time they tried to concentrate their fire, human ships would scatter and attack from different angles. The battle continued for another 20 minutes. By the end, the Kethrani had lost 150 ships. The humans had lost 3, though several more were damaged. On the Eternal Dominion, Zorvith sat in his command chair and stared at nothing. His dreams of conquest were ashes. His reputation was destroyed. His fleet was dying around him. "Fleet Commander," Rethka said softly, "what do we do?" Zorvith did not answer for a long moment. Then he spoke in a voice that sounded old and broken. "We die with honor. We keep fighting until the last ship falls." But before he could give that order, a new voice came through the communication system. A human voice. "Fleet Commander Zorvith. This is Admiral Price." Zorvith looked up at the screen. The human admiral's face appeared before him. The man looked tired but confident. His eyes showed no hatred, no desire for revenge. Only calm determination. "Your invasion has failed," Price said. "Your fleet is surrounded and cannot escape. You have 2 choices. Surrender your remaining vessels and accept our terms, or continue fighting until every one of your ships is destroyed." "The Kethrani do not surrender," Zorvith growled, though his voice lacked conviction. "Then your species will lose 200 more warriors today," Price replied. "And for what? Your conquest has already failed. Your empire will learn of this defeat whether you survive or not. The only question is how many more of your people need to die." Zorvith was silent. Around him, his bridge crew watched and waited. They had fought for the Dominion all their lives. Surrender was not something they had ever considered, but neither was defeat. "You have 60 seconds to decide," Price said. "Choose wisely." The communication channel remained open. The countdown began. Zorvith looked at his remaining ships on the tactical display. 150 vessels out of 300. Half his fleet was already gone. If he kept fighting, the rest would follow. He thought about the Dominion, about the High Council, about what they would say when they learned of this disaster. Surrender would bring shame, but complete destruction would bring worse than shame. It would bring the end of his bloodline, his crew, everything he had built. 40 seconds left. Rethka stepped closer. "Fleet Commander, if we surrender, we may be able to negotiate. We can learn about their weapons, their defenses. That information could help the Dominion in the future." "You speak of spying even in defeat?" Zorvith asked. "I speak of survival. The dead cannot serve the Dominion. The living can. 20 seconds left. Zorvith closed his eyes. He had never imagined this moment. In 60 years of war, he had never tasted defeat. Now he had to swallow it like poison. 10 seconds left. He opened his eyes and spoke the words that would haunt him for the rest of his life. We surrender. The Kethrani fleet powered down its weapons one ship at a time. Shields dropped. Engines went silent. The mighty invasion force that had come to conquer Earth now drifted helplessly in space, surrounded by the human fleet that had destroyed their dreams of conquest. Admiral Price watched from Station Omega as his ships moved into position around the surrendered vessels. He felt no joy in this moment, only relief. The battle was over. Humanity had survived. Begin boarding operations, he ordered. I want teams on every enemy ship within the hour. Secure their weapons and take their commanders into custody. Treat the crews with respect. They are prisoners, not enemies now. Captain Bennett nodded and began coordinating the boarding teams. Across the fleet, soldiers prepared to enter alien vessels for the first time in human history. On the Eternal Dominion, Zorvith stood on his bridge and waited for the humans to arrive. His crew had laid down their weapons and stood in silence, watching the doors with a mixture of fear and shame. They had never been defeated before. They did not know what to expect. The doors opened, and human soldiers entered in black armor that covered them from head to toe. They moved quickly and efficiently, securing the bridge in seconds. Their weapons were strange designs that Zorvith did not recognize. A woman in a different uniform followed the soldiers. She had short brown hair and carried herself with authority. Zorvith recognized her type. An officer. A leader. Fleet Commander Zorvith, she said in a calm voice. I am Captain Laura Bennett of the Earth Defense Force. You and your crew are now prisoners of the human species. If you cooperate, you will be treated fairly. If you resist, you will be dealt with accordingly. Zorvith looked at her with his 4 yellow eyes. She was small by Kethrani standards, barely reaching his chest. But she showed no fear. She spoke to him as an equal, not as a conqueror to a conquered enemy. Why do you not kill us? He asked. That is what we would have done to you. Bennett's expression did not change. Because we are not you. We fight when we must, but we do not murder those who surrender. That is not our way. Zorvith considered her words. In all his years of conquest, he had never shown mercy to a defeated enemy. The strong took what they wanted. The weak died or became slaves. That was the law of the galaxy, as he understood it. But the humans had proven stronger than his fleet. And yet they chose mercy. You are a strange species, he said finally. Yes, Bennett agreed. We are. While the boarding operations continued, Admiral Price prepared for the most important moment of the battle. Not the fighting, not the victory, but the message that would follow. He stood before a communication array that would broadcast his words across every frequency that humanity knew aliens used. Somewhere out there, other species were watching. Other empires were listening. They would learn what had happened here today. The fate of humanity might depend on the next few minutes. Begin transmission, Price said. The lights on the array turned green. His voice went out into the darkness of space, traveling at the speed of light toward distant stars. To all species who are observing this system, he began. My name is Admiral Kevin Price of the Earth Defense Force. Today, the Kethrani Dominion sent an invasion fleet of 300 warships to conquer humanity. That invasion has failed. He paused, letting the words sink in across the galaxy. The Kethrani believed we were weak. They saw our patrol ships and our old defense stations. They thought they knew our strength. They were wrong. Images of the battle played on screens across countless worlds. Alien commanders watched in shock as human weapons dissolved Kethrani ships into atoms. They saw the hidden fleet emerge from its hiding places. They saw the mighty Dominion brought to its knees. For 15 years, we have hidden our true military power, Price continued. We knew that the galaxy is a dangerous place. We knew that species who appear weak become targets. So we let everyone believe we were weak while we built a force that could defend our home. He leaned forward slightly, his eyes intense. What you saw today is only a fraction of our capability. We have more ships. We have more weapons. We have technology that no other species has seen. And we are willing to use all of it to protect our people. In the command chambers of the Kethrani Dominion, the High Council watched in horrified silence. Their greatest fleet had been destroyed by a species they had considered primitive. Their most experienced commander had surrendered in shame. Everything they believed about their power in the galaxy was now being questioned. But, Price said, and his voice softened slightly, we do not seek war. We do not wish to conquer anyone. We want to trade, to learn, to grow alongside our neighbors in this galaxy. Come to us as friends, and you will find friends in return. His voice hardened again. Come to us as enemies, and you will find what the Kethrani found. You will learn that underestimating humanity is a fatal mistake. We are not prey. We never were. The transmission ended. Silence fell across Station Omega. Captain Bennett's voice came through the communication system. Admiral, we have secured all enemy vessels. Minimal resistance. They seem too shocked to fight. Understood, Price replied. What about the scout ship? Vexrel? We captured it trying to flee toward the edge of the system. He is in custody now. Price nodded with satisfaction. The scout who had started all this was now a prisoner. His reports had led the Kethrani to their doom. Over the following days, the captured crews were moved to holding facilities on the moon. Human scientists began studying the alien ships, learning about their technology and their weaknesses. The damaged human vessels were repaired and returned to service. And slowly, the galaxy began to respond to Price's message. The first response came from a species called the Vulthari, a peaceful race of traders who had long been bullied by the Kethrani. They expressed joy at the Dominion's defeat and requested permission to open diplomatic relations with Earth. More messages followed. Species that had feared the Kethrani now saw opportunity. Species that had ignored humanity now wanted to talk. Some offered friendship. Some offered trade. A few offered alliance, but there were also messages of concern. The great powers of the galaxy had watched the battle carefully. They had seen what human weapons could do. And some of them were worried. Admiral Price met with Earth's leaders to discuss the situation. The President of the United Nations, a gray-haired woman named Patricia Blake, asked the question on everyone's mind. What do we do now? She asked. We have shown the galaxy our strength. But have we made new enemies? Price considered his answer carefully. Some species will fear us now. Others will respect us. But all of them will think twice before attacking. That was the goal. We wanted to send a message that would keep Earth safe. And the Kethrani prisoners? We will treat them fairly. In time, we may exchange them for peace terms with their empire. Or we may release them as a gesture of goodwill. Either way, we show the galaxy that humanity can be both strong and merciful. President Blake nodded slowly. You have given us a chance, Admiral. A chance to shape our own future instead of having it shaped by others. That was always the plan, Madam President. We built the hidden fleet so that humanity would never have to bow to anyone. In his cell on the lunar holding facility, Zorvith sat alone and thought about everything that had happened. He had spent his life believing that the strong ruled and the weak served. He had conquered dozens of worlds based on that belief. Now he was a prisoner of a species he had dismissed as helpless. They had beaten him completely, and then they had shown him mercy. They had given him food, clean water, a comfortable place to sleep. They had treated his wounded crew with medical care that was gentle and effective. He did not understand these humans. They broke all the rules he knew about how the galaxy worked, but perhaps, he thought, that was why they had won. A guard came to his cell with another meal. The human was young, maybe 20 years old, with light hair and a friendly face. He did not look at Zorvith with hatred or fear, only curiosity. "Is there anything else you need?" The guard asked. Zorvith stared at him for a long moment. "Why are you kind to me?" "I came to enslave your world. I would have killed millions of your people." "I would have killed millions of your people." The guard shrugged. "You lost. You surrendered. Now you are just a person in a cell. Being mean to you would not change what happened. It would just make me feel smaller." He left the food and walked away, leaving Zorvith alone with thoughts he had never expected to have. Perhaps these humans were not just strong. Perhaps they were something more. And in the darkness of space, watching from a hidden satellite. An observer from a species that no one had detected made notes about the battle and the strange creatures who had won it. The humans were interesting. Very interesting indeed. The observer sent its report to its masters, far beyond the edges of known space. Then it settled in to watch and wait. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity, and humanity's story was only beginning.